When it comes to most video games, there's normally a system that can let you upgrade the characters you are playing as, such as their stats and abilities to make your character stronger and better as the game progresses. But for other games like platformers, for example, in those games, you have items and power-ups that can give your character an item to make them stronger and better for a temporary amount of time, depending on what the power-up is. And what game. Now, I love all kinds of games that use both of these kind of mechanics, and each of those games works great for the type of game it is. Like with the God of War franchise, the more blood orbs you get throughout the game from enemies, the more you can put toward upgrading your weapons. And you have to be wise of how much of the blood orbs you put towards that weapon or magic spell. Now, for the other side of the coin, there's games like Mario games, for example, where in those games you can get a Fire Flower power-up that will give Mario the ability to shoot fireballs. But unless you get hit by an enemy, you will lose the ability to have the power-up. So with both of these type of game mechanics being out there in the wild world of the video game different genres, has there been any game character slash franchise that has done both of these and done them successfully to the point where they both work and flow perfectly well with one another? What has this blue creature not done? The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has had so many shifts in gameplay over the span of 30 years. One thing they've always had in common, well, besides inconsistency in gameplay, but that is the fact that they partake in both gameplay mechanics of the platformer style of the 90s with power-ups and having the modern day gaming character upgrades. And for quite some time, Sonic once rocked with both of them. Believe it or not, there exists not one, not two, but three mainline Sonic games where in those games there was power-up items and there are character upgrades as well. Those games being Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic 06. And each of those games did this perfectly. Each game balancing having upgrades for the character and the item power-ups in the games as well. Sonic Team really had a good thing going with this style, let alone the awesome gameplay that they had. Until they completely trashed it after 06 flopped for them to never use it again. And then move on to the boost. Trash that when they released a sad follow-up, and now we're in a new thing.
Boy, do I love consistency!
And after Sonic 06, Sonic Team really just started going back and forth when it came to having upgrades and items for the Sonic series. Like in Unleashed, there were upgrades there for Sonic, but later on in Lost World, we're back to having power-up items like invincibility and speed shoes, etc. again. But now with the breath of fresh air for the Sonic formula being Sonic Frontiers, this style is going to most likely be the style for who knows how long for the franchise, also known as till it flops. And now with Sonic Team pulling things from past games like the Spin Dash and Proper Momentum returning once again, something has come to my mind. Will we see the return of character upgrades or items again? But when that question came to mind, another question came to my mind. A better question. And that is, should Sonic have upgrades or items? This is something that I've been wondering for quite some time now. And today, I'm going to come to a conclusion and truly see whether Sonic the Hedgehog should have upgrades or items. First up, we'll go over the items of the series and then the upgrades. So, let's get started back to the 90s with the original Sonic games on the Sega Genesis. So in the original Sonic games from the 90s, much like the other platformers from the time, Sonic had power-ups that help you on the journey to defeat Dr. Robotnik. Throughout the game, there would be these power-ups inside these monitors used all throughout the classics. First one being the shield monitor, where you can maintain an extra hit without losing rings. And there's also the speed shoes that give you increased speed for a short time, as well as a ring monitor that gave you 10 rings if you needed assistance on getting rings. Also, an invincibility monitor that helps you give a short amount of invincibility that makes you immune to enemies and spikes. You all shall perish before me! And then there's the 1-up monitor that gives you an extra life. These items would be repeated in the next Sonic game being Sonic 2 and Sonic CD as well. But things would come to a change in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Sonic Team would actually make some pretty neat changes to the monitor power-ups in the classic Sonic games. Starting off, you already got the majority of items from Sonic 1, 2, and CD, those being the ring box, speed shoes, invincibility, and 1-up monitors. But what happened to the shield? Well, in Sonic 3, Sonic Team made new items that acted as a shield, but they took it to the next level. And instead of just a generic shield that gives you an extra hit, they took it even further and made 3 brand new shields. First one up is the Bubble Shield. Once you get this item, Sonic can now breathe underwater and no longer need air bubbles. As well as, if you tap the jump button again, Sonic will bounce on the ground. If you keep tapping, you can even reach higher places that you couldn't get with a regular jump. Next one up being the Fire Shield, to where Sonic is now immune to all fire-related attacks, even lava as well. If it's fire-related, nothing is stopping you. This power-up also has a special ability too, where if you jump and hit the jump button again, you'll do a forward dash mid-air in a fiery aura. This one is great, especially since it's a good way to breeze through boss fights fights. And the final one is the one and only, the Lightning Shield. This one has the ability to where Sonic is immune to any electric attacks, but that's not all this shield has to offer. It can also act as a magnet to rings to pull in nearby rings to Sonic. And not only that, but when you jump and hit the jump button again, sparks will come out of Sonic and he'll do a double jump. Out of all the elemental shields Sonic has, this one is loved by a lot of Sonic fans. And it was these shields that would make Sonic 3 more memorable for many years to come. The way these fit in perfectly with the level design and makes the gameplay more fun overall than it already was is what makes these shields so freaking awesome. These shields don't really feel like a power-up like the previous game shields, but it felt like a reward for exploring the level and finding it. And whenever you get this shield, you want to do everything you can to make sure you don't lose it no matter what. Not just because you get an extra hit, but these are cool and fun to use, and the shields in this game would be translated over to so many fan games in the future, to then being officially brought back in Sonic Mania, and the feeling with these shields is still present in that game. But as the late 90s came, the whole 2D platformer style of gaming was dying. A new generation of gaming was here, and with that eventually came Sonic Adventure. With Sonic Adventure, Sonic Team had to truly bring Sonic into 3D the right way this time after a number of slip-ups. Sonic Team had to get this new game on Sega's new console right, and they did just that, with the perfect formula that is now the beloved Adventure formula. But forget that, we ain't talking about that today. Let's get to why we're here. So in Sonic Adventure, the items make a return for the new 3D Sonic experience, but with a little twist. You see, throughout the classic Sonic games of the 90s, the items that these power-ups were stored in were always in a monitor of the sort, with the item displaying flickering on the front, and once you jump on it, it would make that iconic sound. Then you get the item, but in Sonic Adventure, Sonic Team decided to throw out the monitors and replace them with bubbles? So these, item bubbles have a new design now, and they'll make a little pop sound to whenever you hit them. So, Mr. Consuper, you're asking, what items are here to return in Sonic Adventure? Well, my dear lad, I'll fill you in. In Sonic Adventure, the items for here are the return of the 10 ring item, and there's now a 20 ring as well, and a 5, and for some reason a 1 ring item as well. I guess they're really just trying to troll you here if you really suck at the game. The speed shoes also make a return, as well as invincibility, and of course the 1-up 2. Now that's not all, there are 2 more items here, and I know you're hoping for. It's gotta be the elemental shields from Sonic 3, right? I mean, everyone loves those, so surely they're here. Maybe 1? Maybe 2? Any at all? Okay, that's right. Unfortunately, we will no longer see the elemental shields again until Sonic Mania in 2017. It's not all that bad that they're not here. I could see why, and it most likely might be because they couldn't find a way to implement these items without breaking the game. So what shields are in this game? Well, there is the shield item from the classic games like Sonic 1, 2, and CD, where it's just a generic shield around Sonic, which actually got a bit of a makeover in this game. Instead of the classic blue around Sonic, it's now got a really nice shade of green. And to be perfectly honest, I really like this a whole lot more than the original. Personally, I think the green just stands out a lot better and really gives it this is actually a shield barrier that's protecting you. And also it doesn't mesh with Sonic and just looks really nice. And the other shield that's in this game is a brand new one. Kinda. This new kinda shield is a magnetic lightning shield, where instead of the classic lightning shield from Sonic 3, this one is more magnet focused than like how it was in Sonic 3 where you get a double jump. The reason for that is simply because Sonic had the homing attack on the same button as the jump button, so it wouldn't have worked out to have a double jump and also the homing attack. But they would do this later on down the line. Okay. So those are the items for Sonic Adventure, and would even be the items for Adventure 2, and some of them for Sonic Heroes, and even Sonic 06 as well, except for the shield one. They forgot to put that in even though it's in the manual. These items throughout the Sonic series were great starting out, with basic power-ups to having some of the best power-ups in all of the 2D pixel era of gaming. Even some of these power-ups in 3D in Sonic Adventure was one of many things that really made Sonic Adventure a fun game. But if you thought that was it, ladies and gentlemen, then you are dead wrong, because that's not what 90s Sonic Team did. They took it even further with what you can do with these characters in this game. Not only do we have bubble power-ups that can help us throughout the level, but while playing through the game, you are told to go to the sewer and that you might find something. And once you get to the sewer, you hear a noise, so you walk over to it, and then something that would change the Sonic series forever was introduced.
Now you've got Lightspeed shoes. Press and hold the action button to store up power. Once you have enough power, release the button and you can do the Lightspeed Dash. The Lightspeed Dash lets you race toward rings at light speed. As long as there's a trail of rings, you can go just about anywhere.
beginning of the Sonic Adventure series came many things. Sonic having an amazing 3D gameplay formula that is still loved to this very day, iconic voices for the characters we all know and love, amazing and memorable levels, and fantastic music to go with it. But of course, this game also introduced something that would change Sonic & Co.'s gameplay forever. Literally, like there's no going back once you get these upgrades. Introduced in Sonic Adventure were the character upgrades. These upgrades that were introduced in Sonic Adventure would not only change the design of the characters in the game to have cool cosmetics on them, but would change or upgrade their moves, and even add new moves to the whole. This was such a great implementation into the Sonic formula. It was here we'd see the introduction of the Lightspeed Dash with the SA1 Lightspeed shoes, and even the blue ring that upgraded the Lightspeed Dash, as well as the upgrade that allows Sonic to attack enemies with the Lightspeed Dash as well, and make it the homing dash. Also Tails' iconic Tails attack with the Warrior badge, Knuckles' shovel claws, Amy's Warrior feather to allow her to spin her hammer around her, and so many more for all the characters. These upgrades not only make the characters more fun to play as, but in levels, especially Sonic's in this scenario, you can go back and use these new abilities in previous levels and be able to play through them faster or find new paths thanks to the new abilities you get with these upgrades. These upgrades would forever be a part of Sonic Adventure and would go down as forever iconic in the Sonic series. And you bet your buck when Sonic Team started working on Adventure 2, they'd bring back this mechanic, and yet again, they'd do a great job. With Sonic Adventure 2, not only did they bring back the cosmetic function for the upgrades, but even brought in new moves that would also be iconic to the Sonic series. Like first starting off with the Bounce Bracelet that allows Sonic to be able to bounce up and down on the ground and allow better platforming throughout levels now too. The Flame Ring that allows Sonic's somersault move to have a fiery ore to break metal containers throughout the game. And there's Knuckles' sunglasses that once slid on, you could find hidden items throughout the treasure hunting levels as long as you don't jump. Also, Tails has upgrades for his mech stages, but they aren't all too interesting. And the same thing would go for the other characters as well as upgrade wise. There would be a few differences, like some having not the same thing or a different cosmetic style. Overall, the introduction of character upgrades in the Sonic Adventure games were great and really show that this was a great style for the next era of gaming for Sonic. So many great and iconic upgrades came from these two games. This formula of having character upgrades and power-ups really legitimately worked for Sonic. And lo and behold, when it was time for the next Sonic game that was going to be the first new Sonic game on multi-platform that was not on a Sega console, Sonic Team, when making this game, brought the upgrades and the items back as well for this new title. Kinda.
See, this is the part where I start complaining.
The game after Sonic Adventure 2 was not a game similar to the Sonic Adventure series at all, but it was Sonic Heroes, a completely different game that threw everything out the window that made the adventure game so well loved, and instead they made a Sonic game with a team mechanic and a style back to the classics, bright and colorful levels and also terrible gameplay. So Sonic Heroes did bring back the items for this game, but the upgrades, however, did not return. The main reason for that might be due to the fact that this game is more streamlined than the adventure games were. So having upgrades mid-level wouldn't make too much sense for this kind of game. But there was a sort of level up system for this game, and that is when playing through the level, sometimes when the character defeats an enemy or walks through a checkpoint, they'll say, "Level up!" Basically, your character gains new abilities when getting a power core and can get stronger mid-level, but if you die, you lose it. Also, you don't get to keep it next level. I can understand why this is a thing for this kind of game, but you know, why? So after Sonic Heroes released and then Shadow the Hedgehog flopped, Sonic Team knew it was time to go back to what made Sonic good in 3D. So they decided that for Sonic's 15th anniversary, they were going back to the tried and true return of the Sonic Adventure formula for Sonic in the next generation of consoles, a soft reboot of the sort, a tried and true new era for Sonic. Sonic would be back. This would be the epic Sonic the Hedgehog follow-up title to the successors, and yeah, you already know what happened. It's been nearly 20 years at this point. Do we really got to keep going over this? So looking past the disaster that was Sonic 06, let's take a look at the gameplay. So as previously stated, Sonic 06 was meant to bring back the Sonic Adventure formula for the next generation for Sonic in this soft reboot. And while they messed up the gameplay since they shipped out the pre-alpha and not the final game, they still had the raw foundation here. And what else came was the return of the game having character upgrades as well as power-up item bubbles too. While the items in 06 are about the same as previous games, there are some new upgrades for characters here in 06 as well. First up, you got the return of the Lightspeed Dash, now here's the Light Chip, and as well as for Sonic, you got the Bounce Bracelet that doesn't function really as good as it was supposed to apparently in the demo. Then you got the new moves such as the introduction to something for Sonic that would be with the series even to this very day, the Anti-Gravity Chip, also known as literally just a slide. Then there's Shadow's Chaos upgrade abilities, and then there's Silver Psychokinesis upgrades too. While Sonic has a lot of the cooler upgrades in 06, the whole original concept from the adventure games was still here, and while 06 was, well, 06.
I mean, with one problem that comes from this game, there is one worse one just right around the corner. Why did they think that was okay? Ow. out.
While 06 did have problems that we all know about by now, please let it rest already, guys. The basic adventure formula that made Sonic great in 3D in the late 90s was still kinda present here. The feel of Sonic & Co. was similar to how it all started in 3D back in Adventure. The point A to B levels were here as well. Not to mention the levels have good level design to them, and throughout the levels were fun combat areas, platforming, action shots, and many things that make the levels memorable and some of the most loved to this very day in the series. Of course, there were the items as well as the upgrades, and fun other playable characters were here too. Not to mention the new additions of the Elise carrying stages and Mach Speed too, although they were originally called Super Speed stages in the manual, so that shows that even back then nobody read the game manuals. Bottom line is that while 06 was massively flawed, it still had the formula that made Sonic successful in 3D, much like the successors being the adventure games. But unfortunately, we all know what happened when 06 released, so when the backlash was received, Sonic Team knew they had to get the next game right, and thankfully they did in 2008 with the next big Sonic game being officially released. Unfortunately for Sonic Team back in 2008, gamers and critics, especially critics, just couldn't handle it. No, really, like, the console literally couldn't handle it.
Man, do I love 15 frames per second.
So in 2008, when Sonic Unleashed released, Sonic Team dropped the adventure formula after 06 flop, and brought in the brand new refined 3D boosting style of gameplay. Not only was Sonic's gameplay style different from previous games, but this is when we'd see the introduction of 3D Sonic levels switching from 3D to 2D during levels. But I know what you're asking. What about items or upgrades for this game? Well, to answer your question, when Sonic Team made Unleashed, a lot was changed, from the setting of the game, to the level design, to fit the new gameplay style, and even Sonic's design so they could get a fresh start. Again. Another significant change that would start with Unleashed was where only Sonic would be playable in this game. This is something that would be repeated multiple times over the next decade in Sonic titles. So while knowing that this game did change a lot for the series, did the upgrades or the items make it to this brand new Sonic game? Surely they would have. They've been a series staple up to this point. Items have been here since the very start, and the upgrades have been in every 3D game. Surely we'd get the items or upgrades in the next Sonic game, right? Well, as a matter of fact, yes. Partially. In Sonic Unleashed, we'd see the return of the character upgrades, but only for Sonic since he was the only character playable. And those upgrades would be kind of like a throwback to the adventure games where you find them in the game and not like 06 where you buy them. In Unleashed, when exploring the level select hub world, you could find upgrades for Sonic's shoes to give him new abilities. One of the moves would be the return of the light speed dash. Then after that, we'd see 3 brand new moves here to what is now iconic moves to Sonic's moveset. First up, the wall jump. Basically, Sonic could jump from wall to wall in 2D sections. Then there's a stomp that allows Sonic to stomp through the ground and can also be used for switch puzzles. And then there's the air boost, to where this move simply allows you to press the boost button in the air and be able to fly across the level. While these are simple upgrades and nothing groundbreaking or anything, these are still cool moves that would go on to be used in many other Sonic games for many years afterwards, like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. It would still be great moves in both of these games. And then be all ditched for Sonic Lost World. But wait, whatever happened to the items? Yeah, if it wasn't already obvious, Sonic Unleashed was not only the first Sonic game where a lot changed with the franchise, but was the first Sonic game to not have any item power-ups. Now, while we have a new gameplay style and everything, thus you might think, okay, so no items, what am I gonna do? We'll take a closer look right here of what's here. If you can't tell what I'm getting at here, pretty much what you see here is 2 items brought back for the modern games. Pretty much they took the 10 ring power-up item and turned it to a 10 ring ring. And also they turned the 1-up item box into pretty much just a 1-up you can collect mid-level. These 2 things would be here in the series for many games afterwards, and even to the most recent games of today, especially the 10 ring. So with this in mind, the fact that Unleashed changed a lot for the series, and how they managed to bring back upgrades for this new gameplay style, as well as even back items in a new way as well, with this new type of having these here, you might think that the success of the modern Sonic boosting gameplay, they'd make a new game with this exact style, to have a great story, fantastic level design, as well as feature new upgrades for Sonic to have. But this is Sonic Team we're talking about. So why would they stick to one thing? So after Sonic Unleashed came Sonic Colors, and while yes, this game did follow up great gameplay wise with it being the Sonic Unleashed day stages, except it's the whole game, Sonic Colors had a new power up in the game being the Wisps. So this game not having any upgrades was fine, but then came Sonic Generations, where in that game, the gameplay from Unleashed and Colors was brought back yet again. It had even better levels than Colors. But that's not all in Sonic Generations. There was the return of the items of the classics, but this is mainly for classic Sonic only. But after that, we're at Sonic Lost World, where the items in 3D again? Not to mention the all new gameplay, but then there's Sonic 4 where it's like the classics, then Sonic Forces where it's back to the whips again. What? Why? What in the world is going on with this franchise? Oh. Oh wait, I like this. So if it wasn't obvious enough, the 2010s was a crazy time when it came to Sonic gameplay styles. And that is the fact that more gameplay styles were made here. Starting off the decade was Sonic 4, a spin-off 2D throwback game to the classics. This game wasn't anything too big, but would be where Sega really started the whole nostalgia trend with Sonic games. Then in the same year, Sega then released Sonic Colors, an amazing 2D boosting game with some 3D thrown in there as well, with a brand new power-up mechanic being the Wisps. And the story did take a hit here, and unfortunately this would be a trend throughout the rest of the upcoming decade for Sonic, with the new writers being Pontaff. That pretty much would butcher Sonic game stories, the lore, and just about everything. But besides the story for Sonic Colors, the gameplay was still pretty fun. But would be even more fun was the game after that being Sonic Generations. That would be one of the most well-received 3D Sonic games by critics and fans, and really by fans, mainly for the fact that Sonic Generations has been getting mods for over 10 years now. So with the success of Sonic Generations having the boosting mechanic perfected and loved by many as well, while it is sad we didn't see any upgrades in the past two games, but now that Sonic Team has something figured out for the Sonic series, maybe they can incorporate them again and have a fun, epic 3D boosting game on modern consoles at the time. So, with that in mind, what was the next Sonic adventure to release? Well, wait a minute, what do you mean this isn't the right game? Oh. Sonic Lost World was the next Sonic game to follow up after Generations, and Lost World isn't terrible, but this game is just kinda confusing, really. First of all, this game ditched the boosting mechanic from the past 3 games up to this point, and that was loved by us fans, and instead gave us, Mario Galaxy with a Sonic skin over it. Oh geez, there's the Nintendo contract deal coming in there. But part of the nostalgia pandering in this game was the fact that this game brought back power-ups for the Sonic series. While Sonic 4 already did this for its classic throwback, this time the power-ups are back in full 3D for the first time since Sonic 06. And, well, they're here. Not to mention that they're all classic-y now. How does Sonic 4 make them look more modern than you? And you're supposed to be a modern game. Not that Lost World's power-ups are bad or anything, but well, they're kind of weird. First of all, there's no shield in this game. Not really sure why. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's like, if you're gonna bring back the power-ups, why not a shield? I guess they didn't want to take up too much item space since they already brought back the Wisps in this game for literally no reason at all. Something I hope does not become a trend at all. While there is no shield, there are 2 other power-ups returning, being the Speed Shoes and Invincibility. This is where the weirdness comes in. For instance, the Speed Shoes doesn't even speed you up. They literally just deactivate the run button. Also, both of the power-ups like the Invincibility and the Speed Shoes pull themes from other games. Like the Invincibility theme is the Sonic Heroes theme song, and the Speed Shoes is Reach for the Stars? It's really bizarre that these are the themes for them. Even as a kid, I remember hearing this and thinking it was really odd. I'll truly never understand why this game is this way, even though it probably has something to do with that lovely deal Nintendo printed up for Sega after the success of Generations. But fortunately, the deal would end after Sonic Boom was released, and then it would be time for the next Sonic game for 2017. That title would be Sonic Forces. This new game was shaping to be something that was looking like what we fans wanted for years at this point. The boost was finally returning after many games with it gone, a new custom avatar, a more of a somber tone from the looks of it compared to the previous games from that decade, and overall was looking to be like an epic Sonic experience. Yeah, you already know what happened, don't you? To get straight to the point, Sonic Forces was really an underwhelming game and stripped everything away that made Sonic games awesome. In other words, the definition of a budget title. Lazy level design, automation everywhere, terrible writing, false advertisement, the whole galore. They somehow managed to mess up classic Sonic somehow, okay? Let that sink in. On top of that, for this game, not only was Sonic's gameplay lacking and, well, anything interesting, but there was little to no upgrades or items in this game whatsoever. No reference or anything, besides classic Sonic having them, but that's pretty much a given. But for modern Sonic and the Avatar, just the Wisps. What? Thankfully, things would turn for the better in the new decade being the 2020s. No, not you. No, not you either. Okay, definitely not you. If anything, you're making us go backwards. Fast forward to 2022, and here we are with Sonic Frontiers, with a whole new style for Sonic, and this truly was, for the first time in a while, a good Sonic game. While the game didn't have any upgrades or items like the previous games, it did incorporate the brand new skill tree system for Sonic, and there were a lot of really cool moves here for him. And also, when Update 3 came around in 2023, the characters even got their own skill trees as well. It was really interesting to see Sonic & Co. take on a brand new style with a skill tree for their moves here, where in order to get more, you pretty much have to collect skill points in order to get more moves. This system is very different for the Sonic franchise, but it's done really well for this open zone Sonic game. So after looking at all the games with upgrades or items in them, you can learn 2 things. 1, Sonic Team really loved messing around, but 2, being that throughout the Sonic series, Sonic Team has always managed to have either one of these 2 gameplay mechanics in the games throughout the whole series. In some way, shape, or form, they managed to incorporate having power-up items or having character upgrades, whether it was having exclusively items in the game or having character upgrades only, or even having both in one game. Either way, Sonic Team managed to mostly make the games that had these a lot of fun. But now it's time for the ultimate question, ladies and gentlemen. Should Sonic the Hedgehog have upgrades or items? Well, first up, let's take a look at the new gameplay style for Sonic. So Sonic Frontiers changed a lot with Sonic. This game placing Sonic into an open zone world to where Sonic can now run around and fight enemies, solve puzzles, spin dash, do air tricks, platform, and so much more that I'm too lazy to type in here. I mean, look at this. I'm not going to add this in my script. You get to sit here and read through all this. Now, with this brand new gameplay style for Sonic, that's where we gotta ask, where would upgrades or items even fit in this scenario? I mean, come on. It's not like Sonic Team could just constantly put a bunch of speed shoot item boxes everywhere, especially in a game where you use speed by spin dashing or boosting to go faster, let alone they'd have to find a way to incorporate them to respawn so you can get them again. It's not like a level where you're never going to go to that area again, so what would really be the point of having items? Also, there are no lives in Frontiers and are likely not going to be coming back in future games with this open zone style. The point I'm trying to get at here is having items in the open zone format of Sonic games just simply wouldn't work with this gameplay style. I mean, think about it. How could they incorporate it? Power-ups are mainly built for levels for games, not open world games, especially for this style where Sonic has combat moves and whatnot. So having power-up items in this new style of Sonic games just wouldn't make sense and just wouldn't be right at all. Now, on the topic of upgrades, however, this is a different story. So remember how in the adventure games you had to find the character upgrades in certain spots? Well, what if they could incorporate that into the open zone style of Sonic gameplay? Think about it. They've already done this before in Sonic Adventure 1, where in that game you had to find character upgrades in the hub worlds. So if they wanted to bring back upgrades for Sonic characters, whether it be cosmetic upgrades with a brand new moves like in the adventure games, or even just give regular moves the upgrade worth note like in Unleashed, they could simply hide them in the open zone world, where you could be exploring the world and you look around and you find a glowing light and you get the upgrade to allow you to progress through the game. I think this could be a great way to get the upgrades back into Sonic games. Whether they can have cosmetics on them or not is fine with me. We've been getting cosmetics a lot recently in Sonic games, so they don't even have to make them all cosmetic if they don't want to. But the bottom line is, while the skill tree concept isn't bad per se, I do think having character upgrades is one of the ways to go for this. They could still have the skill tree, but in my opinion, I think they should do what they did in Unleashed, where you get the upgrades and then we can use the skill tree to upgrade them with the XP we find. Now, I'm not referring to the combat in this situation, but the XP factor does still apply here. But I think for something like maybe having new moves or something, I think bringing them in a character upgrade format would be the best way to do. So in conclusion, the winner is upgrades, ladies and gentlemen. Give a round of applause. I'm the only one clapping, aren't I? The Sonic series has had so many varying gameplay styles over the years, and in each of those styles, they always managed to have something that would make a Sonic game, well, a Sonic game. Mostly. Whether that's the inclusion of power-up items that have been there from the very start, or character upgrades that came into play when it was the start of the 3D era for Sonic. Either way, while they're both very different things, upgrades and items in the Sonic series will always be memorable and loved in their own way. Whether you prefer the items or the upgrades, or love having both of them at the same time, you can't deny that the Sonic the Hedgehog series managed to make absolutely fun games with each of these mechanics. So with that said, we now gotta ask, what are we gonna do with the items?
I don't know. Just don't make another one of these. This sucks. Where you belong.